Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Q1 FY22 earnings conference call of Solara Active Pharma Sciences Limited. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Abhishek Singhal. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
A very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining us today for Solara Active Pharma Sciences earnings conference call for the first quarter ended financial year 2022. Today we have with us Arun, Founder and Non-Executive Director, Raj, Executive Vice Chairman Designate, Bharat, MD and CEO, and Subhash, ED and CFO, to share the long-term vision for the business and financials for the quarter. I hope you've gone through our results release and the quarterly investor presentation, which have been uploaded on our website as well as stock exchange website. The transcript for this call will be available in a week's time on the company's website. Please note that today's discussion may be forward-looking in nature and must be viewed in relation to the risks pertaining to our business. After the end of this call, in case you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to the investor relation team. I now hand over the call to Bharat to make the opening remarks.
Thank you, Abhishek. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this call today. For the last few quarters, I've been starting this call by wishing all of you good health, and this call is no different. On behalf of all of Solara's employees, I wish you and your loved ones good health and safe life. Let me talk about our quarter one performance. It has been a quarter with multiple and significant challenges. The second wave of the pandemic that we all experienced in India has also impacted Solara. 275 of our colleagues and many more in our families of Solara employees were affected by COVID. We also unfortunately lost a colleague to this disease. We have announced and implemented a host of measures to support our employees in these trying times. In addition to that, we have walked the talk regarding employee safety and well-being. We temporarily closed some of our sites and locations in keeping with the guidelines of local authorities and our own safety protocols. In these extenuating circumstances, our employees stood tall and ensured that we met our commitments to customers and to broader society. Let me talk about our Q1 performance. In Q1, we also witnessed demand stress in some of our base products, including ibuprofen. The weak demand was more intense in the regulated markets. This demand situation is on account of the pandemic, and we anticipate this to normalize over the next 3 to 6 months. We were able to mitigate some of this impact in quarter one, leading to a performance where we had revenues of 4,115 million INR and EBITDA of 951 million INR with an EBITDA margin of 23.1%. This led to a PAT of 501 million INR. The year-on-year growth of these numbers were 17% on revenue, 10% on EBITDA, and 19% on PAT. Let me talk about some of the underlying drivers behind this performance. As I had alluded to earlier, there was a reduction in sales to the regulated markets, particularly in the base products, and we were able to mitigate this through a very strong growth in new products. We added up to 800 million INR revenue in this quarter from new products. We also grew exceptionally well in focus markets like Asia Pacific, where we've shown a growth of greater than 200% year on year. What's important to note is that we have maintained our share of wallet with all our key customers, be it in regulated markets or outside, for all our business and particularly in our base business. Our cost improvement actions, both on OpEx and also on supply chain, continue to be stellar. And despite the pricing pressures that we have on raw materials, we were able to hold our line when it comes to costs in this quarter. R&D productivity continues to be a high attention point and ensured good progress in the quarter. We have concluded the development of 7 products this quarter, which is the highest we've done in the history of this company. And as we progress, we are well on track to complete 10 to 12 DMS on a standalone basis in FY22. Our market extensions, which I emphasize as a means of very efficient growth, will be in excess of 25 filings in FY22. Coming to our CRAMS business, we've had an excellent quarter. We added 4 new customers to our CRAMS portfolio, which is the highest we've done in a quarter in the last 3 years. And our opportunity pipeline, which is the value of the pipeline that we currently are engaged in with customers, has increased 40% year on year. I reinforce what I said in the last quarterly call. We continue to have very good revenue visibility in our CRAMS business for FY22. In fact, we see visibility where we could potentially grow 50% year on year in our CRAMS business in FY22. Let me also briefly touch upon the future in terms of the strategy, while we will have a more elaborate discussion later on, but just to add some key points here. As we have been talking about, Solara's strategy is predicated on 4 pillars. Let's talk about the base products, which is the first pillar. I did talk about some short-term challenges earlier. I want to re-emphasize, we don't see these challenges as structural. We believe that the broader market picture has not changed, and what we are experiencing now in terms of demand is situational. And we are very well positioned to continue to grow profitably in the medium term in our base business. And to this end, we have executed or in the process of implementing a few key actions. First, we are validating and commercializing a full backward integration for our ibuprofen business by next quarter, that is Q3 FY22. This capacity that's coming up at our Vizag facility will cater to our entire needs of raw materials for ibuprofen across the Solara networks in both plants, and will anchor our position as a cost leader in the market. In addition to this full backward integration will significantly underpin our reliability to our key customers across the globe. We will be amongst only 2 players in the market who have both scale and full backward integration for ibuprofen, and this will benefit us disproportionately as demand recovers. On all our base products, we have maintained or grown our share of wallet with key customers, especially in regulated markets, and this will ensure as demand recovers, we are well positioned to see the benefits accrue to Solara. The second pillar of our strategy is new products, and we have done an exceptional growth in the quarter for new products. In Q1, we've grown more than 50% year on year. We continue to see strong demand and momentum for these products. For a few of our key products, in fact, our entire capacities have been underwritten by customer contracts for the coming 3 to 5 quarters. Our R&D velocity continues to improve. As I said earlier, we've developed 7 new products in this quarter, and we will be in due course filing the DMS for these products. Our work on new technology platforms is progressing exceptionally well, and we are well on track to have at least 2 of these platforms ready for scale up by the end of this financial year. The third pillar is CRAMS. We are making very good headway in our CRAMS business. As I said, we've had a record quarter in terms of new customer additions and growth of our opportunity pipeline, and we see very strong visibility for revenue, not just by FY22, but we see all the signs that things would look good as we go forward. And the fourth pillar of our strategy is inorganic growth, and we continue to stay committed to looking for the right inorganic move to accelerate growth, particularly in our CRAMS business. Accelerating all these levers is our merger with Aror, and we will talk about it extensively later. So let me add the market picture before I hand over to Subhash for his comments. There continues to be an element of uncertainty in demand, particularly for base molecules, as various geographies are in different stages of dealing with the pandemic. The regulated market sales will remain muted for the coming quarter, and we see normalization of demand over the next 3 to 6 months. As I said earlier, we see growing demand for our new products. We are very bullish about the future for our new products, and customers are very excited and have underwritten our capacities for a few of our growth products, as I said, for the coming few quarters. Overall, we see a sober first half on our financials and a stronger second half. And on a combined basis, as we've guided in the presentation, we see revenue growth in excess of 30% and EBITDA in the range of 23 to 25%. I now request Subhash to share some details on the balance sheet and some key ratios.
Thanks, Bharat. As communicated by Bharat, we see a demand and price pressure on our base product, an increase of share of LRM market business share. This has direct correlation and result on some of our financials ratio. Let me start with, you would have noticed we have an increase in working capital by almost 133 crore. Our working capital going up from 522 crore to 655 crore, mainly contributed by higher inventory and receivable. Inventory went up. Primarily, as Bharat spoke, we have a planned shutdown in Q2, so we built up certain inventory to cater the demand in Q2, and also some of the contractual demand or sales which we are planning in Q1 got deferred to Q2. So that has an impact on inventory. In addition to that, LRM market receivables normally operate at higher DSO, and that has led overall increase in working capital so far company in this quarter is concerned. The higher increase or higher working capital resulted in net debt level moving up from 408 crore to 525 crore over the course of last quarter. The above trend are expected to be normalized in next couple of quarters. Net debt to EBITDA at 1.4x and net debt to equity remain at 0.4x. Capex for the quarter was at 49 crore, continue to reflect our focus on growth-led investment. Asset turns were at 1.6x. Let me touch on Aror merger. We have already filed our applications with stock exchange, and post NOC from stock exchange will move ahead and file our application with NCLT. We expect this process to be completed by end of FY22. Since approval is in process, post shareholders approval will start sharing the consolidated financials of Aror and Solara once we have a shareholders approval in place. With the continuous strength in our balance sheet and a positive traction for our strategic agenda, we are well positioned to continue our profitable growth in future. With this, I would like to invite Arun, our founders, to talk about Solara 2.0 post-merger with Aror.
Thank you, Bharat, and thank you, Subhash. Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure to join in today's call. My task today is to basically share the vision of Solara, its evolution from its phase 1 to phase 2, to introduce Raj, my good friend and Vice Chairman, Executive Vice Chairman and Head of Strategy, and he will be the one who's going to be driving this business, led by a strong team from Bharat and Subhash and a lot of other senior leaders in the combined entity, which will ensure that Solara is well poised to become a cutting-edge and leading player in this space. Before I start, let me share my delight in having Aditya Puri to not only join Solara on his board, but also to agreeing to chair the board, and also to welcome and invite Dr. Vinita Rai, who's an eminent bureaucrat, to also be on our board. It's my duty also to thank our outgoing chairman Deepak and Ron, our independent director, for the stellar contributions in our early stage of growth. Having said that, we have, and then of course we have other directors joining in the board today as we broad-base the board to create multiple capabilities of the board so that we can help support Solara build out its version 2. As the founder of Solara, it's been a great journey in the last 4 years, where we've seen the company evolve from a small API player with very little margins to become a very focused, highly efficient operator. Consequently, it's not only met but exceeded several financial goals that we set for ourselves, including having delivered a 10x market cap increase over 4 years of its existence. In that short period, we have become at Solara a pure play API company with a relatively strong portfolio, with very high customer centricity and a renowned supply assurance. It is now time for us to set ambitions high, and today I take pleasure in unveiling Solara version 2, and of course we will take questions around not only what Bharat has reported in terms of numbers, but also if you have any questions around our vision. I just want to reiterate that this is not a guidance, this is an ambition. We normally set aggressive targets for ourselves. We normally achieve them quite successfully. And Solara's ambition to be a top 10 player by default would need that we should be a company with revenues of at least 750 million. That means we need to move our CAGR from our current 17-18% to 24%. We believe our inorganic strategies that we recently announced with Aror will help us blitzscale our business, both in generics and in CRAMS, combined with the wins that Solara already has in the space. And we'll continue with our strong balance sheet to have an inorganic ambition as we build out this business, especially in the CRAMS space. Our playbook is based on simple themes, which is basically grow your base generics business. We intend to launch several new products, with approximately increasing our R&D pipeline to about 30 to 40 products a year from the current 10 to 12. Expand our CRAMS business organically and inorganically, but also look at other inorganic options in the generic space. We also will be focusing on newer technologies, newer products, and increasing our capabilities across domains and regions. This will also include working with companies which are focused on us creating capabilities around new chemistry skill sets and offering both preclinical phase 1 and phase 3 activities and up through commercial scale. And we're investing to build all the capabilities around this. Towards this, announcing our deal with Aror is a significant first positive step. We believe that this has already been well received by the market and our investors and also our customers. This is already leading to very significant synergies. We have appointed a Big Four. We had completed our exercise with a Big Four in identifying all the synergies, including manufacturing synergies, our R&D efficiencies, right pricing, our procurement and cross-selling opportunities, and we have identified synergies in the range of 150 crores to 200 crores on an annualized basis. We expect this to flow through in the next 12 to 14 months, and these are not synergy numbers that we think are hard to achieve. We believe that the API business and the China Plus One strategy is working favorably. The tailwinds that Solara is enjoying will continue. We do see some blips in terms of our base commodity product demand, and that's mainly to do with COVID and to do with, and the reduction of prescriptions in specific programs, and also kind of destocking, because I think with COVID there has been a fair amount of stocking. We see that to be kind of balanced, but that doesn't take away anything from our indicative ideas we presented when the deal was announced, that combinedly we should still be a very strong company, and in the range of around revenues of around 2,800 crores, EBITDA in the range of 23 to 24%, and obviously this will be achieved through a combination of building more capacities, focusing on science, increasing our product, working on cost improvement programs, and then our people that will lead us to become a very powerful player. So with this, I will now request Bharat to take the floor, and if there are any specific questions to me or to Raj, we will be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
So Abhishek, we can open up for Q&A.
Mr. Can we open up for Q&A, please?
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Alankar Garude from Macquarie. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for providing the guidance and updating us on the merger synergies. So my first question is on the long-term target. Can you broadly break the 4-year ambition of 25% sales CAGR into the 4 verticals: base business, new launches, CRAMS, and any future acquisitions?
So, Alankar, we spoke about this when we had discussions, but we are saying that the 750 million, 30% of that business should come from CRAMS, which means we have to build our business, which is now less than 300 crores in the combined entity, almost a $200 million business. So the $300 million of generic business or $275 million of generic business should effectively double. And it will not be right for me to tell you exactly do we know how this growth is coming through these buckets. But we believe that by splitting the focus on product acceleration and velocity and increasing the base business and cross-selling, we can double the generics business in the next 4 years.
And Arun, if you could confirm that this doesn't include any acquisitions, right? The 25% number?
Well, there won't be any big ticket acquisitions. There would be tuck-ins, but that will not constitute more than 10 or 12% of this ambition.
Understood. The second question, as far as this long-term aspiration is concerned, if I look at the margin guidance, 23 to 25%, it's actually lower than what the combined entities margins are currently. And on top of that, we'll have those synergies of 150 to 200 crores. Plus, in general, if CRAMS grows at a higher pace, that should also aid our margins. So why are we being conservative, and what's the reason for this 23 to 25% guidance or aspiration?
Well, it is not that we do not aspire to have a higher margin, but it is simply that we believe that there would be fair amount of organic expansion in capacities leading to some element of under recovery on a constant basis in the next 3 to 4 years. Especially if you want to build a CRAMS business, you have to build capacity ahead of customer conversions. So we have adjusted for that.
Okay, so that is the main reason. No other reason why the margin guidance is lower than where we are.
The margin guidance, Alankar, is in line. But if you adjust for the fact that you cannot be in the CRAMS business without having the infrastructure ahead of business.
Understood. And maybe one question to Arun before I get back in the queue. Arun, in the past, you have treated your stake in Solara as more of a financial investment, and now with you joining the board, so can you take us through what have been the triggers to take this decision of joining the board now when you could have done it earlier as well?
Well, good question. Well, you know that I typically don't do this. I had to make some exceptions because of the new arrivals into the board. There were some asks because the vision of getting somebody like Aditya Puri interested to come and chair our board was based on the vision that I articulated, and it's something that he wanted me to stick my neck out and execute. You understood what I mean? So I continue to have a non-executive role. I think between Raj and Bharat and the rest of the team, we have a phenomenal leadership team. Raj comes with deep entrepreneurial insights, and he has a lot of experience around this business. I just think my reason for getting onto the board of Solara is more to do with getting a broader board interested, and I'm very happy with what Solara has delivered for us as investors, and I think they'll continue to do that. But I do not have an operative role. I continue to be a non-executive, but I will obviously be available. And I also don't intend to come on our investor calls. This is because it's more a major milestone day for us in terms of our board reconstitution, but also in terms of what we are unveiling as our vision.
Fair enough. Thanks, Arun. I'll get back in the queue.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sriram Rathi from ICICI Securities. Please.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So one question on the regulated market business. I mean, you mentioned that it is because of some demand pressure in some of the products, including ibuprofen. So the revenue figure seems to be very, very low at 180 crores. So, I mean, which other products would have got impacted? And at the same time, was there also some impact of the temporary shutdown that we took?
So, in the regulated market, products that were impacted were, products that were, for example, used for treatment of seasonal flu and similar such products that we have in our portfolio. As I said, the most impact was on the base products, and that's kind of where you saw the biggest dip in terms of demand due to this. And sorry, there was some disturbance in the line. I did not get your second question. If you could repeat it, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I was just asking, I mean, because the figure looks very, very low. So, I mean, is there something which has been deferred from this quarter to next quarter or something like that, and we will be back to normalize on that? And because, I mean, what I'm noticing is that from the last 2 quarters, the proportion of regulated market is decreasing, and at the same time, non-regulated market is increasing significantly. So is there some change which has happened on some of the markets? I mean, just to get an idea.
No, I don't think there is anything structurally changed. I mean, the simple way to look at it is when there were lockdowns across the regulated markets, which were complied with broadly, less people were going out, which meant less people had aches, pains, or other needs to get any of these medications, either OTC or otherwise. So there is, as I said earlier, there is nothing structurally that has changed in the market. This is all situational and caused by the blip that we see. Now, we've also very clearly indicated in our commentary that we expect 3 to 6 months for things to normalize, because every time that you see that, different geographies are dealing with the second wave or the third wave, depending on where you are, at different levels. So nothing structurally has changed. It's situational brought about by the pandemic, and we expect this to normalize in the next 3 to 6 months. And reiterate, our position with all our key customers in the regulated markets are as strong as ever. So as the demand comes back, we will benefit from it, in some cases disproportionately.
Just to add what Bharat just said, it's double impact. One, yes, there was a less demand because of less injury, less people going out. In addition, a lot of customers have built up their inventory. So this was the time when they started destocking. That also led to lower offtake and impacting the demand or impacting the revenue of regulated market at our end.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. Sure. And also, I mean, if you can just provide some details, I mean, in terms of, I mean, how is the pricing scenario now versus FY21 for the products? And do we believe, I mean, I believe we have the largely long-term contracts, but for the industry and for the business which are not long-term in nature for us. So how has pricing moved, I mean, for the last 2-3 quarters?
So in some of our base products, there is stability. I wouldn't say that it's across the board there is pressures, but one of the consequences of demand stress is pricing pressure. And these are particularly intense in spot markets where we are typically not very active. For our contractual customers and the larger customers, I would say there is no significant dip in pressure or anything that would be not mitigatable by the right actions. However, there will be some reduction in pricing that we see this year, which is normal year on year that we would see in part of the overall contractual discussions. That would happen. How the demand evolves and how the demand picks up will dictate the intensity of that and the longevity of that.
Okay, sure. Got it. And lastly, one thing, I mean, this contribution from new products has increased considerably this quarter. I mean, if you can provide some details in terms of which are the products which have been benefited most, I mean, which are the large products now in that category?
So we typically don't break it into a product name level, but broadly speaking, as we've introduced quite some products over the course of the last 6 months, and we also did, in the last quarterly call, I mentioned that we had also, quickly turned around already in Q1 sales of Favipiravir when the second wave was at its peak in India. So all of these contributed and helped the growth of new products to reach the levels of 20% of revenue in Q1.
Okay, sure. Got it. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vishal Mandadane from Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and congrats for having the full backward integration for ibuprofen. Just would like to understand that further, like with the margin improvement because of the backward integration, and at the same time there have been some softening of ibuprofen prices. So how do you see the profitability on the product going forward? And the lowering of ibuprofen prices, has that first of all impacted in the first Q1 FY22 numbers?
So the second question first, if I would answer, see the way we have been able to mitigate, because some of the forward pricing that we had towards the end of last financial year, we were able to mitigate some of the pricing pressures in Q1. However, as we said, as demand normalizes in the coming 3 to 6 months, there will be some impact of the pricing pressure in the current quarter. The backward integration will go a long way in not just ensuring that we're able to manage our margins in ibuprofen well, but also to anchor our position as the only player, I would say, in the market currently who has a scaled business when it comes to ibuprofen derivatives and has full backward integration. So that positions us in an entirely different framework with our customers and gives us the opportunity to continue to grow our ibuprofen business in the coming years. And to talk about the margins, I mean, with the backward integration, this will definitely offer us relief in the second half of the year in terms of any potential margin impact.
Got you. Secondly, on the CRAMS business, like given the current size of the business, like when do you see the significant takeoff happening, or rather qualitatively, if you could just help us understand where do we stand, let's say from the innovator's perspective at the contract research stage or a contract manufacturing stage?
So most of our CRAMS business is in the contract manufacturing, some contract development. We don't do yet a lot of hardcore contract research. Having said that, I mean, our visibility, as I said, is very positive. We start getting very interesting opportunities with big pharma companies across the spectrum. And we're very delighted to see that, our positioning in this market, where we talk about the fact that we focus on solving tough chemistry challenges, where science is a differentiator. It's no longer about cost and capacity alone in CRAMS. It's about what do you bring on chemistry. So the third C is what we are focusing on, the chemistry. And that's yielding the benefits that we see now in this business. And that's starting to see already, as you've seen in this quarter, we've grown well, added new customers, pipeline strong, conversion ratios are getting better. So going back to your comment on qualitative metrics, it's all pointing in the right direction. And that gives us the confidence to guide, what I said earlier, that we see visibility to grow 50% year on year in our CRAMS business this year.
Got you. And just, if you could just share Aror financials for 1Q pro forma, say sales, EBITDA, PAT for the quarter.
No, as we, in fact, in my opening remark, the way we communicated, we will wait for shareholders' approvals to be in place before we start sharing Aror numbers. So let's wait for a couple of quarters before we reach that stage and start sharing.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder to the participants to ask a question, please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Kunal Randeria from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Good evening, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. My first question is on long-term guidance. I know you have covered it a bit, but just trying to understand a bit better on what gives you confidence to give such a strong 4-year guidance. I mean, are you entering into more long-term contracts, or do you expect a lot more niche approvals, which can give you a lot more sticky revenue stream? Just trying to understand this, a bit more.
So, okay, let me answer this, Arun, here. A lot of it comes from the Aror stable. Remember that Aror has got a little over 20 DMFs already filed. Customers engaged, already site changes and source changes are happening. It's also based on their order book that will accelerate our generics business.
But Aror would be more like CRAMS business, right? But that will only be 30%. So what
Aror has got, out of the 550 odd crores, they did 400 crores of generics and 150 crores of CRAMS last year.
Okay, fair enough. Second, Arun, you also mentioned that there will be a lot of infrastructure investments in this business. So just can you elaborate a bit more on that? What kind of investments, human capital, new plants that you look to do in the next 4 years?
That is nothing to do with CRAMS. An inorganic strategy around CRAMS is almost impossible given the multiple CRAMS business trade at today. And stress assets means that you do not get high quality customers with it. Now that the two companies have close to about 300 crores of CRAMS and CDMO businesses in its combined business, we believe we need to invest very heavily in new infrastructure and new technical capabilities, new chemistry capabilities to attract players in the potential customers in the CRAMS space or enhance our portfolio of customers. So typically, in the CRAMS business, as you would know from the competitive landscape, you have an under recovery for 2 to 3 years, and you also build specific bespoke assets for the CRAMS businesses, which is very different from generics. So we would have investments in that space in the next 2 to 3 years. And it typically takes 2 to 3 years for the business to completely play out. So if we are doing today a 300 crore business in CRAMS, it typically means that you're building a fairly strong order book for 3 or 4 years, assuming that 40 or 50% of the programs that you're currently engaged will see success if it's an NCE product, or the customer's happy to move you as a second source or a primary source. So typically in this business, all players of size and magnitude invest very heavily upfront, and we are in that phase. So that's what I was trying to articulate.
Sure. But can you sort of quantify the kind of investment? Would it be possible?
Early, we have the ability, especially in Vizag, to carve out a lot of capacities because we have a lot of land and the utilities and infrastructure. But it's a little too early. Probably the CRAMS play out, we can address these questions in about 6 months with a lot more clarity.
Sure. Appreciate that. Thanks a lot. All the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Aejas Lakhani from Unifi Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. First query is, could you tell us about the amount of goodwill that you will come on account of the books on account of Aror?
the way we are working, in fact, we are in consultation with a lot of experts, but these transactions will be a common control transactions, and if we go with that route, then this will be merged at a normal asset value. It will be a merger, so there will not be any goodwill getting created as a part of that. This is the approach on which we are working. We yet to get a conclusion on that, but this is what we expect will be the final position for us.
Okay, and by when will you get clarity on the same?
So this is basically post after NCLT approval. This is where the final approval on all the questions which we have put forward in our merger applications will get answered.
Yeah, but we are confident that we will achieve it.
Yes.
Okay. My second query is that in your annual report you have mentioned unrecognized tax credits of about 540 crores. So would you say that we will have no actual cash tax payouts for the next 2 to 3 years? Is that a fair assumption?
Let's wait for, I call it this year, we are confident will not have any tax payout other than MAT. We'll continue to be a MAT paying company for next couple of years, yes. But depending on how our next couple of years profit comes out to be, the situation will become more clear. Will that be 1 more year, or will that be getting discontinued, or will reach that stage faster?
Got it. And I just want to ask you that so we were looking at your last 3-year DMF filings, and what we noticed that about 65 to 70% of the molecules have less competition, and the 25-30% have a little more higher competition where there are, say, 25 players. So could you just mention what is the average market size of these molecules for the ones which are which have less competition and the ones which have larger competition? Thanks.
So it's very difficult to paint that with a broad brush. So when we are choosing molecules and standalone Solara, but also as the merged combined entity going forward, we do look at competitive intensity. We do look at our ability to differentiate from a chemistry science perspective. So it would be very difficult to give you one estimate for every molecule that we choose. But the one thing I can confirm is that when we choose a molecule, we have found a way to, or a right to win in that molecule, which we see scalable, growable, and profitable. So that's kind of the way that we go through our product selection process.
Thanks. I'll come back in queue.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Bharat Sheth from Quest Investment. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. Bharat, this question is for you. See, when we are going for this for ibuprofen backward integration, because it is a very large product for us, so we can really create a niche for ourselves by being a most competitive player. So taking, larger volume, few products vis-a-vis smaller molecule number of products. So what will be our strategy going ahead? Because in smaller molecule, the asset turn will be comparatively lower.
So I think we have a very balanced portfolio of products already, and with the addition of the portfolio of products from Aurora, we have 100 plus products which are a good mix of what you would call higher volume products to what you would call lower volume but very accretive on margins and with large customer stickiness. So that balance will continue. So we will have both of these type of products in our portfolio. I think as was articulated in the presentation and what Arun said earlier, we have a very strong ability to continue to win in the base molecules, and we will, as we increase our R&D velocity and bring new products with differentiation to the market, also be successful there. So for us, it's not an either or, it's an and. We will do both, and we will do both successfully, and the balance in the portfolio will always be between the two.
Okay. And second question, you have been talking about this new technology platform and new chemistry. So can you elaborate a little more, as well as how we are evaluating this continuous manufacturing with the micro reactor and all we are evaluating?
Yeah, so that is one of the tech platforms that we are working on. There are others, enzymatic being the other, and then we are looking at high potency as also a technology platform. And complex generics, and all of these are things that we are working currently on. As I said, at least 2 of this we will have this ready to scale by the end of this financial year. All of these, we believe, we bring to both CRAMS and generic APIs, which gives us a differentiation and the scientific capability to grow our business with good margins.
Okay. And how that will improve asset turn or anything?
See, as and when we are bringing new products and as and when we scale them up on the pure, generics business, the asset turns will continue to be improved based on that. And that's kind of the strategy that we use. We use that as one of the metrics we choose to look at which products fit in which asset. And part of this synergy identification has been a lot of detailed dive into this exercise to make sure we have optimal utilization of capacity across both networks and soon to be one network, with asset turns being one of the criteria we're using to slot molecules.
And last question, Arun in his remarks said that because we want to grow CRAM very aggressively, so we need to invest and create a lot of infrastructure ahead of really we can take the benefit of this whole CRAM space. So how much capex are we when we are looking for a 25% CAGR growth? Capex we are planning?
Bharat, is that for you or for me?
That is for Arun. So overall, I mean, either, but Arun, you said that we need to create a lot of infrastructure in advance to take a CRAM business next level.
Yeah. So I don't see currently the company has been investing about 200 to 250 crores of capex per year. We think that kind of investment will continue for at least another 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And that should then solve for all our capacity needs, including the CRAMS and the generics business.
Sorry to interrupt. May I request Mr. Bharat Sheth to please rejoin the queue? We have participants waiting for their turn.
Okay.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Tushar Manudhane from Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the follow-up. Just one clarification on FY22 guidance of 2,800 crore. Any opportunity one-off built into that, or this is more like the sustainable run rate to go?
It is, it is sustainable. The company, both companies do have very specific COVID products. We believe COVID is here to stay for at least 2 to 3 years. So we are not suggesting that there aren't any one-offs, but there are potentially several newer molecules that are being repurposed for COVID. So we have with 150 odd products in the combined entity, we'll always have some COVID opportunities, but we just don't believe that COVID is going away in 3 months or 6 months. It's something here to stay, and we'll have to solve for the challenges for several years. There is an uptick both at Solara and Arur for specific COVID products, and there's a downtick for products which are not. Like for example, in the acute care, the demand worldwide, the prescriptions will drop between 10 to 15%. So once destocking happens, we do see some pressure on demand. But with newer products and in the chronic space and in expanding markets, we always are able to manage this business quite well. So I wouldn't say that there is a specific one-off contract which is not sustainable. Maybe the portfolio changes, but if you have 10 COVID products, one product will be in season in this quarter, another one will be in season the next quarter. But overall, we should be able to maintain a certain level of comfort around the numbers that we are guiding.
Thanks for that elaborate answer. Thank you.
Abhishek, you want to?
Yeah, next question, yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Karan Sarona from Monarch. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Just wanted to ask the update on the FTA for Vizag plant and what kind of capacity utilization are we targeting for FY22 and target capacity utilization for the same plant in 23. And with non-regulated markets in our portfolio now, what are the receivable days are we kind of looking at? And if you can give some color on that, would be great. Thanks.
So let me start with the update in Cuddalore. So we have currently completed all our actions on time, and we believe with the right corrective and preventive actions in place. We have also sent communication, and we continue to engage with the US FDA, and we are eagerly awaiting their presence to audit the facility for a reclassification. And we'll find out whenever they're ready to do so. But we are ready, and we have been for some time. Then coming to capacity utilization.
Bharat, Arun here. Just to point out, or rather magnify, the facility was inspected by European authorities very recently and got an approval. We should all remember that the specific OI was related to the NDMA issues of ranitidine and nothing to do with the quality systems related to the organization. We are confident that we have addressed these matters. It is also important to know that our CEP for ranitidine has been reinstated in Europe. So we think this is more to do with travel restrictions, and we do hope, like Bharat mentioned, that this will be behind us in an expedited manner. Bharat, I hope I'm right with my assessment.
Absolutely. I think the restoration of the CEP is a validation of the fact that we've done all the right things. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Coming to the utilization, capacity utilization, we expect that it will be in the late 80s, early 90s like it was last year. As we talked about earlier, we have the flexibility to do multiple products in most of our facilities, and that gives us the opportunity to have high capacity utilization as we go forward. So FY22, we see similar capacity utilization as we saw in FY21. And I think we, as Arun had already talked about in the vision commentary, as we build the capacities to support particularly our CRAMS growth, this utilization number may vary depending on when the capacities are coming on stream and when they get fully utilized. But for now, as we see the visibility for FY22, it's going to be very similar to FY21, late 80s, early 90s capacity utilization.
And about the receivable days, if you can give some color on that.
No, in fact, we talk about increase in working capital. So currently our receivables are around 100 to 115 days, and that's where we stand.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's it from us.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nitin Agarwal from DAM Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Arun, on the guidance, just to probably get a couple of points. If I heard it right, you mentioned CRAM should be 30% of the revenues by FY25.
Correct.
And secondly, so if you just take that as a sort of goalpost, I mean the revenue guidance that you put out obviously is fairly interesting. The margin guidance is obviously a little underwhelming, and you obviously alluded to the fact that there is a degree of under recovery on the CRAMS part of the business which is going to be there. I mean, so at a point in time, maybe a year, 2 years out from post FY25, once probably this under recovery situation corrects itself. I mean, in your assessment, what is the potential of the business model, the profitability of this business model, from a sustainable profitability perspective?
Well, I mean, we have obviously guided the EBITDA margin with a sense of caution. I mean, remember the business has grown from its 8% EBITDA to where it is today in the last 4 years. We believe that the need for pure play players will be important, and I think it'll be fair to assume that the margins can be adjusted upwards between 3 and 4% if we get all our math right. But it's always better to err on the side of caution. And that's why we have put that range.
And more, philosophically at some level, I mean, a business like this, with the kind of mix which is there between CRAMS and APIs that we are envisaging, and business operating out of India with the dynamics which are there, I mean, what is 30% EBITDA margin a possibility in this business, or is possible to a business model like this can deliver even margins north of 30%?
I think it's possible. I think companies who have been in the space do that, and there are other companies who have been recent entrants but have completed the capital investment phase over the last 4 to 5 years, have also delivered significantly on OpEx leverage. So I think for us, from a CRAMS ambition, we would be agnostic on where we are domiciled. We believe that we would be international from at least in certain capabilities that we may not be comfortable doing here, and also in terms of customer acquisition. Sometimes we will do some bolt-on which will be outside of India. But I think it will be fair to assume in a steady state, a 30+% business on a combination like ours would be quite reasonable to expect.
That's helpful. And secondly, on the API business growth that we sort of envisage over the next 3 to 4 years, obviously it's going to be a mix of both existing products growing through as well as new products coming through. But is there a higher weightage towards any of these two segments in terms of it's going to be more driven by new product launches or more of the legacy products growing themselves?
It will always be a combination of the two. I mean, cross-selling on this is a very big uptake. As you can see, we have guided next year for an incremental revenue of at least about 200 crores cross-selling products, 150 to 200 crores in that range. So that obviously will be a very critical element in this synergy. But more importantly, it's the portfolio. Considering that Aror has, like I explained earlier to another question, that we have seeded several of our customers, and we have a very solid order book on many of the DMFs that have been filed, and they are all very special DMFs with you. So either if it's a commodity DMF being a late entrant, we've been able to secure customers by cost leadership using new technologies, enzymatic routes wherever applicable to get a cost low. But more importantly, on the more niche products, where in the middle of the pyramid we add a lot of products which are not necessarily focused on asset turns, but focused on high gross margins, potential profit shares with the formulators because of the number of DMFs are very few. I think the combination plays out very differently, and you'll see bulk of that coming from that strategy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, in interest of time, we will take last 2 questions. The next question is from Antique Stock Broking. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Just one question. Can you provide the breakup between API and CRAMS for this quarter, revenue breakup?
So CRAMS was in the late single digits as a percentage for the quarter.
All right. And when you say that you've added 4 customers in CRAMS, are these mainly for late stage or are these for life cycle management products?
So it's a mix. Some of them are late stage clinicals, some of them actually are in the early stage clinicals, and some of them are products where they're looking for a second or an alternate route of synthesis or a source. So it's a good mix of projects we've got with these new customers.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Alankar Garude from Macquarie. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the follow-up. Firstly, sir, was there a meaningful contribution from COVID-19 drugs for Aror in FY21? Because if you look at the year-on-year jump in EBITDA in FY21, referring to the MCA data for FY20, the jump seems quite high.
Yeah, you're right. We did disclose that we were a significant player in the favipiravir place. We were an important player to the innovator. We did disclose that. We continue to have developed the whole suite of COVID products at Aror, and we are an important player in all the new repurposed drugs in COVID. So there's no product that we don't make.
And Arun, is it possible to comment on the sustainability of the 175 crores of EBITDA which Aror did in FY21? So you feel confident of, or Aror feels confident of growing that number?
So we did guide you then that the EBITDA, sustainable EBITDA, has to be assumed at 150 crores because we did get a COVID bump last year. but we are very confident of growing that at a faster tick than the Solara business because of the regulated market filings that have been completed and customer onboardings that have happened.
Understood. And my final question is again on ibuprofen backward integration. So just wanted to understand what led to this decision to backward integrate now after so many years, and will we follow a similar strategy for some of our other top 10 products where we are not backward integrated?
I mean, I'm addressing this for Bharat in the interest of time. We took this decision to back 18 months ago. There were reasons of confidentiality and also various other reasons that this is not in the public domain. It was not a material it is a material investment from all aspects. But we are actually, as Bharat said, get validation of a fully integrated ibuprofen player this quarter, right? So you can't build a plant in 3 months. This was a 12 or 14-month facility build out. It's one of the largest facilities, and not only does it cater to our needs, but we can also sell the intermediates to other ibuprofen manufacturers. So we knew that if demand constraints were, if we had headwinds and we were in this business for 30 years, it's a very different company from what we were in ibuprofen 30 years ago, right? One is we've got almost all of the marquee customers, brand owners, we are partnered with them. Our ibuprofen program was pre-ordered, as in pre-advanced by one of the biggest ibuprofen consumers in the world. So when we went into becoming a stronger player in the space, we decided and to be sure that we were fully integrated. And it was something we took 14, 15 months ago, a decision. It's just playing out now. And that will ensure that we continue to meet volumes and still give a reasonable, absolute gross margin or EBITDA on this program going forward.
That's helpful, Arun. Thanks and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
So once again, thank you for joining in these times where we're all dealing with multiple things. Wish you again the best of health for you and your loved ones. Re-emphasizing a few key points, I hope that we've been able to paint a good picture of the fact that we have a very strong vision that's guiding our journey going forward for Solara 2.0. Re-emphasizing also the point on the fact that the base demand that we talked about for the products in the base portfolio is situational. Structurally, the market remains the same that it was 6 months ago, and we're well positioned to benefit when the demand comes back and grow profitably as we have done in the past. Thank you once again. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you all.
Thank you. On behalf of Solara Active Pharma Sciences Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your line.